This is the Double Doink Dynasty League podcast with Boyer, Andy, and your host, Tyler.
Hits the upright again. That's impossible.
Season's going to end on a double doink.
Welcome back to Double Doink Dynasty Podcast, presented by two of your performance-enhancing dads and this ugly man with us, Mr. Colin Nolan. What's happening, my guy?
Not much, my friend. I appreciate the compliments and you guys hosting me tonight.
Hey, listen,
really excited to talk about you guys and lack of success on your end, and more importantly, the success on Boyer's end and winning a championship.
I like this guy.
I only make fun of my friends, so you're slowly getting in the loop. You'll be all right.
Yeah, I still see your friend request on Facebook pending, so I still see it there.
That's fair. We're getting there.
Right.
So all right. Boyer, first off, congratulations. You won a championship. You're not good at that, so I'm surprised you did it, but good work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll try and be a gracious championship and not rub it in everyone's face. I mean, individually, I will be at your houses to rub it in your face, but outside of that, I'll try not to do it too much.
That is so nice of you, my guy.
More details, please.
I mean, if you get a knock on your door and you're like, this is 2023, no one knocks on the door, it's me.
All right, so first off, have you sent Isaiah Hodgins a thank you letter yet?
To be honest, I have a lot of thank you letters to send. Pretty much throughout the year. Hodgins is definitely at the top of the list. But as thank you letters go, you have to wait at least 4 months before any thank you letters get sent. I feel like everybody understands that. Like, you have to be like, oh, well, I'm busy. I'm sorry. I haven't sent them yet. So, like, they're coming.
All right, that's fair. Mostly because Hodgins knocked Andy out, pushed him to third place, allowing you to play Jerfry that shit the bed the last week of playoffs, right?
To be fair, all of Jerfry's team shit the bed. So,
right. So, real quick, with that, Jerfry's team shit the bed for you, which was nice. Andy, on the other hand, had he won, was sitting on 70 points. He still had a couple players playing in that Bengals-Bills game. How do you think you would have handled that situation?
So, what was
Andy been the one there?
Because I scored, 109 in championship week?
You scored 108.5. Yep.
Okay, so who did he have left?
So Andy had Burrow and Mixon. Burrow, Mixon, and Singletary, and he had 74 points.
So if I know Andy, I would have offered just to split it with him and co-champion, because I feel like projections probably would have put him like right there, maybe a little bit above me. I'm not sure exactly, but I have to imagine it would have been kind of one of those too close to say definitively who gets it. So the mature thing in that situation is just talk to the other person, and chances are we would have just co-championed and split the pot and gone on with our lives. I noticed that the fantasy community at large has a lot of fun theories on how to fix that situation, and it makes a lot of people hurt or upset or frustrated. And I don't feel like that's what this league would have happened. And with the relationship I have with Andy, I have no doubt we would have just co-championed it. I would have exactly more like this, actually, but
correction.
But
there are these available on people too that are guys, but go on.
But to be fair, I think that's probably what would have happened, unless Andy conceded based off of the fact that he didn't have the points. But I would have offered to co-champion on that one.
Okay. Nolan, you have anything you want to throw at Boyer? I know I threw you in this last minute.
No, not really. I think that the way that we handled that was pretty straightforward, pretty balanced on both approaches, because I did see some extreme ideas out there in the fantasy community and how they handled those tiebreaker decisions. So I think we would have handled it just fine, and I do like the way we handled it. I mean, for that round, anyways.
So, Boyer, I want to run back a little bit. I guess you really didn't. You made a handful of trades this year, but your handful of trades were really nothing. You moved Claypool for Goodwin in a second. You moved Kareem Hunt for a handful of picks. You added Myers in a third. There's a handful of pieces that you moved around, picked up. So what? I guess what part, since you didn't, the only big move I guess I would say you made, picking up Juwan Johnson, Tennessee, our Titans, not Titans, tight end for New Orleans. Words are tough.
I agree.
That worked out.
I've already gotten eaten by the word monster on this one.
So, I mean, that was a good pickup for you. A solid player, put up some decent weeks. Outside of that, you grabbed Prescott for the first. We talked about that on a trade show. Is there anything any moves that you liked that you made this year? Any moves you wish you maybe would have made? I know you won the championship, so like, oh yeah, I wish I would have made more moves. Like, no, I won the championship. But is there anything even just for this season that you thought you might have done different or wanted to do different outside of what you did?
So the big one was Zeke. Getting Zeke solidified the running back room, putting Eckler and Zeke in there, and Zeke ended up having, I think, a very consistent like 12 to 14, 15 points from when I had him on, which was big for the playoffs for the most part. I know it was at that first round I had 79 points, and Mattoon, shit the bed and kind of let me get to the championship regardless. But without that, consistency in that, especially once Dameon Pierce went down, and by down, I mean, he would have played in any other team. It's just that the Texans sucked. So it's like, why try? So, but that's why I went out to go get Zeke, and he did exactly what I needed him to do. So I'm happy about that one. I'm less happy about Prescott just because he was very up and down. Herbert ended up like pretty much the time that I made the Prescott trade. Herbert ended up getting his weapons back and started playing well again. But then by playoffs, he started not playing quite as well again. And so I'm happy I had Prescott. A first round was a way over buy. And the only reason why I'm happy about it is because I won a championship. So I can just kind of brush it off to the side. If I don't win a championship, I'm probably looking at that here in a couple of years when I don't have a 25 first and saying, what the was I thinking? So it worked out. And he did have more points than Herbert for the most part on most weeks. It was kind of hard to choose between them at some times because there were times that he just didn't play well. But Prescott if I could have gotten him for a second, would have been really happy with him regardless, no matter what. But a first was an overpay. But I was just too worried about Herbert, and I had Davis Mills or whoever it was as my next quarterback. So I had to get something, especially if I want to make that playoff run. And it worked out, squeaked through in one round, did decent enough in the next. So I don't remember any other like trade talks where they kind of like broke down where I was like, man, I really wish I got that guy or did this. My team was pretty well set from the draft on. Based on what I had set up from last year and the startup. So there wasn't a big trade that I was like, oh, I wish I did that. The trades that I wanted to make, I made, even if it was an overpay.
Right. I know the only one that broke down, we're not going to bring up too many salts in the wounds, but we had conversation about possibly me moving Mahomes once I got him. Mm-hmm. And I know that definitely would have helped you moving forward, but you got your championship either way. So
yeah, I mean, we talked about it kind of early in that process, and I think Underhill had him on the block for a long time, And your team was starting to do well enough that you're like, do I get Mahomes? Do I not? And I was like, well, like I could make this deal where I give you Herbert, give you that young quarterback who's not going to, screw your max points for, and get you, a first or whatever it is to make up the difference. And then I get Mahomes and I can make that run. You made a different call. But I can't blame you for it because it ended up actually catapulting you to damn near playoffs.
Right.
Which I didn't expect to see. At the time I was expecting have a young quarterback to for the future. But you made the right call in that case. And there's a reason why I wanted Mahomes was because of what he could provide. So I wish we could have gotten that done, but I understand why we didn't. I really wish that we could have gotten that done because I would love to have Mahomes for the rest of the next 10 years or whatever. but it worked out in the end. So I've got my championship, and now you can win the next 7 or 8, and it's all good.
No one would disagree with you on that.
Don't give Tyler his Miami Heat moment. Not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9.
Um,
Talking a minimum 10 piece.
Right.
So I know me and you have talked about it a little bit, but going into playoffs, kind of how did you feel? Where did you think that things would go? Who did you want to play? Who didn't you want to play? Any insight on which teams you were most worried about? I know hindsight's 2020. You know how shitty some of these teams were, but going into it, what were some of your thoughts?
So going into playoffs, I felt less than super confident because my team was a steady Eddie all year, but I struggled, as a lot of my fantasy teams do, to find the overall ceiling. I was third or fourth in overall points, so I was still up there. Like, it wasn't like I wasn't scoring points, but it didn't seem like I was having some of those, like Underhill had like a couple weeks at like 120 points, and I was really never ever getting up to that point. So looking at that and knowing how playoffs pan out, generally you want that ceiling. You want to be able to do that.
You were fifth in points for. You were behind Andy, Burns, Underhill, and Mattoon.
Right. So I knew that I was okay, but not super great. I had a little bit of luck on my side. I had a decent floor. I missed playoffs last year as like the second highest points for. So I got some positive regression as far as luck goes and that. But I didn't feel super great, especially with my competition. Mattoon, everyone viewed him as a super team, despite the fact that his team the last, few weeks of the regular season was starting to, obviously show some cracks. Andy's team looked really good throughout the entire year. And then Jer Fry snuck in, and there's a reason why they snuck in. I mean, they were winning games early, and they just kind of kept making the right pickups and moves and doing it was weird. It didn't make really any sense, but like it was a team that you had to be worried about because it was like, well, if this is what, like, I've gone up against teams like that. I've seen teams like that in other leagues, and they end up winning the championship because of that happening. So
all you got to do is sneak in and be hot at the right time, right?
Exactly. So I thought that my team was probably going to get bounced in the first. Didn't expect to make the championship, but I feel like I was going to be competitive in whatever matchups I was going to be in, and I was going to be there. I got lucky that Mattoon shit the bed. He was shitting the bed for a couple weeks before, and he was, even in the Dynasty chat, he was like, my team sucks. And everyone was like, like, for real. But then when you look at it, it's like, yeah, your team kind of sucks right now. Like, it doesn't make sense, but it does. So having him as I would have rather faced Jer Fry, like, prior to hindsight, I would have rather faced them, obviously, because, like, just name-wise and who they had on their team, that's who you want to play. Did not want to play Andy at all. Like, if I could avoid Andy, that was the goal, because I felt like Andy probably had the best team top to bottom, and I lucked out. Mattoon on a downswing. Andy got beat by Hodgins, and I played Jer Fry, who scores 49 points in the championship. Like I don't want that to overshadow the fact that I did score like the 108.5, which I feel like the average for this league, now that we took defensive kickers out, is like less than what I would expect a normal standard league to be. The average points was definitely lower. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it felt like it was in like the mid 80s or something silly.
Yeah.
So 108's good, but chair fry at 50. I mean, I could have played like 7 guys or like 3 guys and I would have been fine. So
you average this year at 13-16, you average about 87 points a week, and you were middle of the pack. So yep. I mean, and you weren't that far behind anybody else. So Andy probably averaged close to 95, maybe closer to 100, but everybody else was in that like 87 to 90 range with you, Mattoon, Underhill, Burns.
Yeah, and my team was definitely, again, low floor, lower ceiling, but that kind of kept me, it helped me beat teams like Nolan.
Hey, man, I'm on a 3-game win streak. I'm on a 3-game win streak right now.
I'll say I didn't do that last year. To make the playoffs last year, I missed it by a game, and I lost to Nolan's team in like week 10 or something stupid. He beat me like 56-50, and it was like, this is embarrassing. And those were the kind of games that I was winning, this year instead of losing, and that got me into the playoffs. So, as far as like teams outside of playoff teams that I'm glad I didn't have to face, Kelly's team was hot going forward. I mean, he was in the mix. I'm shocked that Burns's team wasn't, in the mix a little bit more. I know he was there, but there was a lot of scenarios where he wasn't going to make it. Just because he has Chase and Jefferson. Chase missed some time, I think, but like that, he has a scary team, kind of a scary core that just didn't quite mesh where it needed to. And then
his running backs let him down real bad. Fournette, Montgomery.
His quarterback play as well.
I believe he does Burns have Montgomery? Do I remember that right?
He does.
Yeah, him, Montgomery, and Fournette.
Yeah, and Pollard.
And I feel like the Bears tanking really hard after like week 12 really dropped him down, because Montgomery in that offense was doing just fine while they were kind of semi-trying, and Fields was getting all the running yards, and the Bears were getting all these, rushing records and all that stuff. But then they kind of stopped trying. Simeon came in, played a couple games because Fields was mildly injured or whatever, and Montgomery kind of fell off a little bit, didn't have the same consistency. So that hurt. But the team that I was probably the most worried about that I didn't want to make playoffs was Tyler's. You won like 7 straight going forward. Kenneth Walker, once you added Mahomes, and like just the way that you had lost your first like 6 games, and then Walker started and you got Mahomes almost simultaneously, and suddenly your team transferred from bottom dweller to I'm going to start just destroying everybody. And it was one of those where it's like, well, I'm a division winner. If like, I'm not going to be the number 1 seed. So I do not want to see you in here, because if you win that wild card game, there's a really good chance you end up winning the championship if you can get there. And so I'm really thankful that you didn't make it. I mean, hindsight, like once we see the points, like I don't think it would have happened, but like I would have
lost it. Andy would have beaten me in playoffs, right? I would have ended up with Andy week 1, and he would have beaten me by 1 point, which pushed me to 3rd place, which means you would have played Andy in the playoff or in the championship.
And what did Andy score in the championship? Would I have lost to him if that had happened?
Well, in the championship, we talked about that. He was at 74.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we would have co-championed. So, to be honest, that mattered. It 100% mattered.
Jared Fry had enough to beat him week 1, which helped.
Yep.
So, before we move on, I'm not sure, Nolan, you're on board with this, but I've got to hit my favorite segment, and it's a little, wow. Is anybody drinking with me? Of
course.
Boyer, what are you drinking?
Well, I have a healthy dose of Norco.
Nice.
to go with my Samuel Adams Alpine Lager.
King of the castle. King of the castle.
Exactly.
Colin, you got anything? Water, juice?
I've got some Dr. Pepper sponsored water here. It's
Ooh.
filtered by Brita. Tap water filtered by Brita. It's got great flavor. Works
he's
well with
throwing-
my hot tea.
He's throwing all the sponsors out for us right now.
I got my peach whiskey with
Ooh.
some Sprite in my, hold on, if we're gonna do it, in my Guinness glass that you can't
Oh,
see
nice,
in the
nice, nice,
background.
nice.
You know,
Mine's also reversible Pepsi.
sponsored by the Niners, sponsored by Guinness, we don't have any sponsorships. It's whatever. Colin Nolan and the insurance agency, Tyler Boyer and the insurance agency, they're all going to start sponsoring us soon. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I've got a direct line to the marketing department. We're so close on a deal, I swear.
Yeah, it's 7 figures minimum. But we're gonna say there's a T-ball team we're also considering.
Well,
I'll say, or at least a 24 pack of Coors Light.
Yeah, so that's also on the table.
that's really all I ask for, Geek.
Right?
But anyway, Boyer, I got a future question for you too. Where do you feel your team's going from here? Do you feel like you're middle of a championship window? Do you think you're going to continue this championship run? Do you think there'll be a mini rebuild at some point in the near future? Do you think where are you at your team? How do you feel moving forward at this point? Now that we know how you felt about your championship run, where do you think your team's going from here?
Yeah, I think I've got one solid year left. I've got Zeke and Eckler. Those are going to be the anchors. If they play fine, I mean, Eckler was like top 3 or top 5 or whatever it was. If he says top 12 and Zeke says top 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, I should be pretty much in the same spot I was in this year, where, top 5 points could be in or out of playoffs, who knows. But I've got a young group of wide receivers. I've got Mark Andrews, who's only 27, 28. Herbert, who's young, and hopefully we'll get a new offensive coordinator who doesn't suck and actually lets him, throw the ball downfield with the howitzer of an arm that he has. And then if that doesn't happen, Dak is more than capable of being a top 10 quarterback to get me through. So, and I've got a lot of depth. Gabriel Davis and Jacoby Myers are okay, solid wide receiver spots. Najee Harris is there as a young guy. Damian Pierce is there. I don't have Pacheco anymore. Moved him over to Nolan's team. Don't have Ridley anymore. Moved him over to Nolan's team, if anybody's keeping track.
These two trade a lot. I don't know.
But we talk a lot. So
which leads to trading at some point.
It really does. Like sometimes you're just like, hey, what are you doing right now? Oh, I'm doing nothing. It's like, cool. We making this trade? And it's like, sure. I don't know what trade we're making, but sure. Why not?
Right. I'll take it for the next 3 months. You can have him after that.
Right. But I got Jamal Williams, who's, a great locker room presence, obviously. Just a great guy to have overall. Funny as hell. Best personality in the league. But I've also got the 112, the 206, and the 209. So there's depth coming back to the team as well. And if all of that works out well enough, I think I should probably be in about the same spot as this year, maybe a little bit better, assuming Herbert doesn't suck all year, and make another run. The following year is what I'm a little bit worried about, but that's where I'm trying to add as much young talent as I can now, and hopefully that'll pay off. Who knows? But I think my window is open for one more year. But I mean, we've talked about Mattoon's team now for 2 years being Mattoon's team and being the team, and he hasn't won a championship. So there's no guarantees. So you just hope your window is open. You hope your team does roughly what they're supposed to do and you get to the playoffs and things work out. It did this year. Can't guarantee next year. Just got to keep making the right moves and hope it works out.
That's fair. Last question from my end. You've got a first, second, 2/3, 3/4, and a fifth right now. You've got a handful of picks. Any thoughts on this upcoming draft on how you're going to deal with some of your lineup situation here?
Yeah, what worked out really well last year for me was just grabbing running backs. That's something I plan on kind of sticking with. I mean, I got Dameon Pierce. That worked out really well. In fact, when I moved up to the 2-2 in that draft, I wanted Spiller to like be the backup to Eckler. Hope maybe he had some standalone value or something like that. And then Andy at the 2-1 took Spiller. Thank God Andy took him at the 2-1, because then I was like, oh, well, I like this guy. He runs hard. I'll take Pierce and just hope he just, rises up. And it worked out really well. But I think that's the strategy right now with my young wide receiver core. I've got quarterbacks up the wazoo. My tight end situation is fine. Might pick one in the later rounds to see if someone hits, but it's going to be running back central again, I think, in this one. Just make sure I keep that depth rolling, and just, once Eckler and Zeke, go to over the rainbow road, then, Najee and hopefully one of these young running backs can kind of, take that spot. So it'll be running back heavy is my anticipation, assuming that, the first, 11 picks aren't running backs. So, we'll go and kind of take it year by year, but that worked last year. Don't see a reason to change it this year, especially with this fact that the team just hasn't changed all that much. And you mentioned it, I didn't make a lot of big deals, a lot of big changes or anything like that. So trust my young wide receiver core and go from there.
Yep. Nolan, any comments, questions, concerns about Boyer other than Boyer just being Boyer? Like, let's get into his personal life too hard, because we don't got all night. So
right, yeah, that would get too deep. Serious, we'd probably all cry. Boyer might hurt his knee again, might have to miss some more work. We don't want that. But yeah, no, just kind of wondering, Boyer, are you gonna do anything with pivoting off of maybe Dak now that you kind of you think that Herbert's gonna ascend next year? Do you have a plan with Dak and kind of pivoting to maybe another position that'd be maybe of more value to your team?
It's a really good question. I do not know the answer to that. I want to. I think that's like, clearly that's the goal, is to have Herbert be the guy that I drafted him to be, and that he was for year one for me. He was awesome in the first year of Dynasty for me. This year he really struggled, which is why I went to go get Dak and overpaid, whatever. I really think he was held back by his offensive coordinator. And I think that he'll be fine. The question is, can he move back from fine to being, Dynasty top 5? Right. So I believe in the talent. Like, he passes the eye test every game, regardless of what his stats show, and his stats are still mildly ridiculously good. So it's not like he's turning the ball over or doing anything stupid. He just can't win games because his team sucks. His coaching stuff sucks. So I believe in him, but I will not move Dak until I feel comfortable with Herbert. He shows out week 1 next year, I'm probably moving Dak for a second. Maybe third, and I'll probably get blasted. But if I have a young quarterback in the wings to back him up, or if I get a Derek Carr or a Jared Goff or something like that, move him, get him out of here. I trust Herbert. But I think that's going to be a wait and see approach for sure, because I don't know if you can trust the Chargers organization at all. Eli would, agree with me. That's why he went to the Giants.
Right.
So, it's a wait and see approach. I don't see me moving Dak before the season starts. And I see what Herbert can do, hopefully with new offensive coordinator.
Right. So until we see a Skip Bayless, you taking his jersey and throwing in the trash, we should expect him to kind of stay on your bench, just waiting in the wings.
I don't listen to anything Skip Bayless says. Like, literally a word that guy, no, nothing.
Somehow it ended up on my timeline on Twitter. So
yeah, he
I'm
shows
ashamed to admit
YouTube.
that.
He shows up on my YouTube and was like, man, this guy pays a lot of ads for YouTube.
Right. Yeah, what's his budget as he's a 71-year-old TV personality.
Right.
So, all right. Well, with that, Boyer, you have any last comments that you want to throw out to the league about your championship? You want to just brag for a minute? Tell them how good you are?
So here's what happens championship week. Thursday night comes in, and me and Jerfry have a chat because we watch the Fantasy Footballers together. And generally, it's a pretty cordial text chat. Generally about the Fantasy Footballers. Sometimes if we're facing some combination of each other, me versus Jeremy, me versus Fryer, me versus both of them in this league. And it's usually like, hey, good luck this week. F you. Like, whatever it is. Pretty much as soon as that game started, that went out the window. They were brutal. It was Dak and Zeke were both in that Thursday night game. They set up 7-0, like take Dak out. And they're like, oh, Dak looks like he's injured. I wasn't watching the game because I don't want that stress, right? So, like, it was brutal. I was like, you guys are killing me right now. And the trash talk was flying, and I let it brush off. And I'm glad that I did because I think the fantasy gods rewarded that. Clearly rewarded the trash talk versus the get out of here. So I'm not gonna brag. I'm gonna stay as humble as I can. I'm gonna make sure that my roster is as good as it can be next year. And hopefully the fantasy guys will look kindly upon that, keep my points where it needs to be, and I'll be at least in the hunt next year. So not gonna brag, gonna back off. But I didn't want to let everyone know that Jared Fry kind of took me to the fire on Thursday night, and then by Sunday they were speaking a very different tune.
All right. Well, with that, congratulations again. I look forward to the rookie draft coming up, the NFL draft, combine, all that sorts of fun stuff, which really gets Dynasty moving again. And then we'll see what happens. But good luck in the draft. Nolan, good luck in the draft. We'll see what happens. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited to get into year 3 here, and really just keep this Dynasty train running and learn more and see what happens. So on that note, I hate all of you. We're out.